Hello, everyone, and welcome back to English Logic Studio. I'm Emily Grace, and today we're going to talk about English idioms. Idioms are expressions where the words together have a meaning that's different from the individual words. Idioms can be confusing for English learners, but they're incredibly important to learn. They're common in everyday speech, and native speakers use them all the time, often without realizing it. Understanding idioms will help your English sound more natural and help you better understand conversations with native speakers. In this lesson, we will look at 24 popular English idioms. For each one, I'll explain where it comes from, what it really means, and how to use it correctly in conversations. Let's get started. Let's start with some idioms related to time, which are frequently used in both casual and business contexts. You'll hear these idioms often in everyday conversations, and they'll be valuable additions to your English vocabulary. Our first idiom related to time is beat the clock, and the meaning of this idiom is to finish something before a deadline or when time is running out. This phrase came from games in sports where people had to finish tasks before a timer went off. You can use this phrase when you're rushing to finish something on time. For example, when you say, "We need to beat the clock and submit this proposal by 5 p.m., you're talking about finishing before a deadline. Or when the team worked through lunch to beat the clock and finish the project, they're hurrying to complete something before time runs out. Our second time-related idiom is in the nick of time, and the meaning of this idiom is just before it's too late or at the last possible moment. This phrase came from Old English where the word nick meant a precise moment back in the 1600s. You can use this phrase when something happens at the very last moment possible. For example, when you say, "The ambulance arrived in the nick of time to save her life," you're talking about something happening just before it was too late. Or when "I submitted my application in the nick of time," just seconds before the deadline, you're describing how close you came to missing an important cutoff. Our next idiom related to time is around the clock, which refers to something happening continuously all day and all night without stopping. This expression comes from the image of the hands of a clock making a full 24-hour cycle, going around the entire face of the clock. We use this idiom when describing activities that don't pause for breaks or sleep. For example, the emergency services work around the clock to keep people safe. Or, in a personal context, during exam week, I was studying around the clock and barely slept. You'll hear this phrase often in healthcare, emergency services, and any industry where continuous operation is essential. Now let's move to money idioms, starting with break the bank. This expression describes something that is very expensive or costs more than you can afford. The idiom has a fascinating origin in gambling history. When a player won so much money that the casino called the bank couldn't pay all the winnings, the player was said to break the bank. Today, we use it to talk about affordability. For instance, "Don't worry, this restaurant won't break the bank, the prices are reasonable." Or when planning a vacation, you might say, "A weekend getaway doesn't have to break the bank if you know where to find good deals." It's a vivid way to discuss whether something fits within your budget. Another common expression about expensive things is cost an arm and a leg. This powerful idiom emphasizes that something is extremely expensive by comparing its cost to something irreplaceable, your own limbs. The origin is thought to come from the post-World War II era, referring to soldiers who had lost limbs in battle, essentially paying the highest possible price. You'll hear this phrase in everyday conversations about high prices. For example, "That new smartphone costs an arm and a leg, but all the features might be worth it." Or discussing housing, "Properties in the city center cost an arm and a leg these days. So many people are moving to the suburbs." This idiom conveys much more impact than simply saying something is very expensive. Let's finish our money idioms with penny pincher, a colorful term that describes someone who is extremely careful with money, perhaps even stingy. The expression paints a vivid picture of someone squeezing or pinching a penny so hard to make it last longer, being extremely frugal with every cent. This term dates back to when pennies had significant value and being careful with them was more common. You might say, "My grandfather was such a penny pincher that he would reuse tea bags 5 times and keep the house freezing in winter." Or as friendly advice, "Don't be such a penny pincher. It's your birthday. It's okay to treat yourself to something nice." This expression usually has a slightly negative tone, suggesting someone is perhaps too careful with money, though in some contexts it can be admiring of someone's thriftiness. Now let's shift our focus to some idioms that describe achievement and success. English has many colorful ways to talk about victories and accomplishments, and these expressions appear frequently in both casual conversations and professional settings. Let's explore some of the most common success idioms you'll hear from native English speakers. First, let's look at hit the nail on the head. This idiom means to describe exactly what is causing a situation or problem, or to be precisely correct about something. It comes from carpentry, where hitting a nail exactly on its head requires skill and precision. When someone makes an observation that's exactly right, we say they've hit the nail on the head. For example, your analysis of the company's problems really hit the nail on the head. Or, when she said we need better communication, she hit the nail on the head. Our next success idiom is with flying colors, which means to succeed at something impressively or by a large margin. This expression has a fascinating origin in naval tradition, where ships would return from battle with their flags proudly displayed to show victory. This vivid imagery perfectly captures the sense of triumph that the idiom conveys. You might use it like this: "She passed her driving test with flying colors on her first attempt." Or in a professional context, "Our team completed the project with flying colors, and the client was absolutely delighted with the results." This idiom adds emphasis when you want to highlight that someone didn't just succeed, they succeeded spectacularly. Our third success idiom is ace it, which means to be extremely successful at something or to perform excellently. This expression draws from card games where the ace is the highest or most valuable card. When you ace something, you're performing at the highest possible level, like an ace card. This idiom is particularly popular in educational and professional contexts. For example, before an important interview, you might encourage a friend, "Don't worry about your interview tomorrow, I'm sure you'll ace it." Or after a presentation, you might hear, "She really aced her presentation," and the executives were impressed with her knowledge and delivery. This is a more casual, modern idiom that's especially common among younger speakers, but it's becoming widespread in general usage. Now let's switch gears and explore idioms that describe when things don't go as planned. English has just as many colorful expressions for failure as it does for success. These idioms help you talk about setbacks and disappointments in more interesting and nuanced ways than simply saying something failed or didn't work out. Our first failure idiom is back to the drawing board, which means you need to start again from the beginning after a plan has failed. The origin comes from engineering and design fields, where failed designs would require returning to the literal drawing board to create an entirely new plan. This idiom acknowledges a setback while also suggesting resilience and a willingness to try again. You'll hear this phrase in both professional and casual settings. For instance, after a rejected proposal, someone might say, "Well, our proposal was rejected, so it's back to the drawing board for our team." Or in a more lighthearted context, "My attempt at baking a souffle was a disaster, back to the drawing board." This expression has become a standard way to acknowledge failure while maintaining a constructive attitude. Our next failure-related idiom is bite off more than you can chew, which means to take on more responsibility or work than you can reasonably manage. This expression has a very literal and visual origin. Imagine taking a bite of food that's too big for your mouth. We can all relate to that uncomfortable feeling, which makes this idiom particularly effective. You'll use this phrase to describe situations where overambition leads to problems. For example, by signing up for 5 classes while working full-time, I've definitely bitten off more than I can chew. I'm exhausted and falling behind. Or, as friendly advice, don't bite off more than you can chew with this project. It's very complex and you already have a lot on your plate. This idiom offers a memorable way to warn against overcommitment and the problems that can result. Our final failure idiom is miss the boat, which refers to missing an opportunity because of hesitation or delay. The origin is quite straightforward. It comes from the literal experience of arriving too late to catch a boat or ship and watching it sail away without you. This imagery perfectly captures the feeling of seeing an opportunity disappear because you didn't act quickly enough. This idiom is particularly useful when discussing timing and opportunities. You'll miss the boat applications close tomorrow and they won't accept any late submissions. Or, discussing business trends, many traditional retailers missed the boat on e-commerce in the early 2000s and struggled to catch up later. The expression conveys an important life lesson. Opportunities often have expiration dates. For example, if you don't apply for the job today, and hesitation can lead to regret. Let's move on to relationship idioms, expressions that capture how humans connect with each other. The way we interact with others has inspired many colorful phrases in English, reflecting the complexities and nuances of human connections. These idioms will help you describe various aspects of relationships, from first impressions to ongoing dynamics. Our first relationship idiom is hit it off, which describes getting along well with someone immediately or having good chemistry from the very first meeting. The origin possibly comes from cricket, where batsmen hit off successfully, although the exact etymology is debated. This idiom perfectly captures that magical moment when you meet someone new and conversation flows effortlessly. You'll use this phrase to describe positive first encounters. For instance, we really hit it off on our first date and ended up talking for hours. We didn't even notice the restaurant was closing. Or, in a professional context, my new colleague and I hit it off right away. We have similar backgrounds and complementary work styles. This idiom is almost always positive and suggests the beginning of what could be a good relationship, whether friendly, romantic, or professional. Our next relationship idiom is see eye to eye, which means to agree with someone or share the same opinion or viewpoint. The origin is quite literal. When two people are the same height, they can literally see eye to eye, suggesting they have the same perspective. This idiom is particularly useful when discussing agreement or disagreement between people. For instance, my brother and I don't always see eye to eye on political issues. He tends to be more conservative while I'm more progressive. Or, in a professional context, after weeks of disagreement, the two managers finally saw eye to eye on how to approach the project, which allowed the team to move forward. You'll notice this idiom is frequently used in the negative form to express disagreement, or to highlight when people have reached an agreement after a period of conflict. Our third relationship idiom is give someone the cold shoulder, which means to deliberately ignore someone or treat them in an unfriendly way. This expression has a fascinating origin in medieval hospitality practices, where unwelcome guests were served cold shoulder of mutton instead of hot food, a not-so-subtle hint that they weren't welcome at the table. In modern usage, this phrase perfectly captures that feeling of being socially frozen out. For example, after our argument about the borrowed money, she gave me the cold shoulder for a week, not answering my texts or even acknowledging me when we passed in the hallway. Or as social advice, don't give your friend the cold shoulder just because they couldn't attend your party. They had a legitimate family emergency and really wanted to be there. This idiom effectively communicates the hurtful impact of deliberate social exclusion. Now let's explore idioms related to how we communicate with each other. The English language has developed many colorful expressions that describe different communication styles, from being completely straightforward to being deliberately unclear. These idioms will help you describe the various ways people express themselves and the effectiveness of their communication. Our first communication idiom is speak your mind, which means to say exactly what you think, even if others might not like it. The origin is straightforward. It directly refers to expressing the thoughts in your mind without filtering them. This idiom is commonly used in situations where honesty and directness are either valued or creating tension. For example, in a workplace scenario, don't be afraid to speak your mind in the meeting when the new proposal is discussed. Your opinion as a senior team member is valuable, and management needs to hear different perspectives. Or describing someone's communication style, my grandmother always speaks her mind, which can be embarrassing sometimes, like when she told our neighbor that his new haircut made him look like a hedgehog. This expression generally carries a positive connotation in cultures that value straightforward communication, though it can also describe someone who perhaps speaks too directly in situations where tact would be better. Our next communication idiom is beating around the bush, which means avoiding talking about something directly or delaying getting to the main point. This colorful expression comes from hunting, where beaters would circle around bushes instead of going directly in to flush out birds. In conversation, it describes when someone is being evasive or taking too long to address the real issue. You might hear someone say impatiently during a difficult conversation, "Stop beating around the bush and tell me what happened to my car. I can see the dent in the fender, so just explain how it got there." Or, in a news analysis, the politician beat around the bush for 10 minutes when asked about the controversial policy, talking about everything from the weather to his childhood without ever addressing the actual question. This idiom often carries a negative connotation because direct communication is typically valued, especially in business or important personal conversations. Our final communication idiom is put words in someone's mouth, which means to suggest that someone said something when they didn't, or to misrepresent what someone has said. The origin evokes the visual image of someone literally inserting words into another person's mouth, a forceful way of making them say something they didn't intend. This phrase is commonly used in disagreements when someone feels misquoted or that their meaning has been distorted. For example, in a relationship conflict, "Don't put words in my mouth. I never said I disliked your friends. I just said I was too tired to go out with them tonight after working a 12-hour shift." Or in a media context, the reporter was accused of putting words in the athlete's mouth in the controversial article, claiming she criticized her teammates when she had actually been talking about general team strategy. This idiom highlights the importance of accurately representing others' viewpoints, especially in sensitive conversations, negotiations, or public discourse. Our final category focuses on emotions and attitudes. Instead of simply using basic words like happy or sad, English offers many colorful idioms that express feelings with greater impact and imagery. These expressions add depth and nuance when describing how we feel, making emotional descriptions more vivid and engaging. Our first emotion idiom is over the moon, which means to be extremely happy or delighted. This cheerful expression comes from the nursery rhyme, "Hey diddle diddle," where the cow jumps over the moon, suggesting a joy so great that it defies the laws of nature. When someone is over the moon, they're experiencing an extraordinary level of happiness that goes beyond everyday contentment. You might use this in celebration context. She was over the moon when she got accepted to her dream university after years of hard work and preparation. She literally jumped up and down and called everyone she knew to share the news. Or, in a team setting, the team was over the moon after winning the championship that they had been working toward for 3 seasons, with players hugging each other and some even crying tears of joy. This idiom is perfect for describing those special moments of pure elation that stand out in our lives. Our next emotion idiom is down in the dumps, which describes feeling sad, depressed, or in low spirits. The term has an interesting history. Back in the 16th century, dumps actually referred to a state of depression long before our modern understanding of mental health. This idiom gives us a gentler way to talk about sadness that most people can relate to. For example, imagine this situation. After Carlos didn't get the promotion he'd been working toward for months, he was really down in the dumps. He canceled his weekend plans, barely answered texts from friends, and spent most of his time just watching old movies on the couch. His roommate finally convinced him to join a pickup basketball game, which helped lift his spirits. Sometimes physical activity and social connection are the best remedies when you're feeling down in the dumps. This expression acknowledges those temporary periods of sadness that we all experience, without sounding too clinical or dramatic. Our third emotion idiom is lose your cool, which means to become angry or emotional, essentially losing control of your emotions. This expression emerged from jazz culture in the 1950s, where being cool meant maintaining a calm, composed demeanor. When you lose your cool, that carefully maintained composure disappears, replaced by visible anger or emotional outbursts. Picture this scenario. During the high-stakes presentation, the CEO lost his cool when the projector malfunctioned for the third time. He slammed his fist on the table, shouted at the IT staff, and stormed out of the room, leaving everyone shocked since he was normally so composed and professional. Later, he apologized to the team, acknowledging that the pressure of the investor meeting had gotten to him. This idiom is particularly relevant in professional settings, where emotional regulation is highly valued, but it applies equally to personal situations where keeping calm would be beneficial. Finally, let's examine idioms that describe different attitudes and approaches to life's challenges. These expressions help us talk about mindsets, how we face difficulties, respond to obstacles, and approach tasks in our personal and professional lives. These idioms reveal a lot about cultural values around perseverance, surrender, and skepticism. Our first attitude idiom is go the extra mile, which means to make more effort than expected or to do more than is required. This expression has a biblical origin, coming from Matthew 5,041, which talks about going further than demanded. This idiom reflects the value many cultures place on exceptional effort and going beyond basic expectations. Here's how it plays out in real life. When Priya started as a new server at the restaurant, she quickly became management's favorite because she consistently went the extra mile for customers. While other servers just took orders and delivered food, Priya remembered regular customers' preferences, suggested wine pairings, and even learned basic phrases in multiple languages to welcome international guests. Within 6 months, she was promoted to head server and began training others on her approach to customer service. This idiom is especially common in professional contexts, where exceeding expectations can lead to recognition, advancement, and stronger relationships. In contrast to going the extra mile, our next idiom is throwing in the towel, which means giving up, surrendering, or admitting defeat. This vivid expression comes from the world of boxing, where a fighter's corner would literally throw a towel into the ring to signal surrender and stop the fight, usually to protect a boxer who was taking too much punishment. The imagery perfectly captures that moment of deciding that continuing isn't worth the struggle. Here's how it might play out. After 3 years of trying to make his downtown restaurant successful, Michael finally threw in the towel. He'd adjusted the menu, renovated the space, tried different marketing strategies, and even brought in a business partner, but the location just never attracted enough foot traffic to cover the expensive rent. Rather than continue losing money each month, he decided to close this location and focus on his more successful catering business instead. Sometimes throwing in the towel isn't about failure. It's about making a strategic decision to redirect your energy where it can be more effective. This idiom helps us talk about the sometimes difficult but necessary decision to stop pursuing something that's not working. Our final idiom is take it with a grain of salt, which means to view information with skepticism or to not completely believe something. The origin is fascinating. It dates back to an ancient remedy of taking small amounts of salt to help swallow unpleasant medicine, making something more palatable or easier to accept. In modern usage, it suggests maintaining a healthy dose of doubt when encountering information that might not be entirely reliable. Let me illustrate how this works in practice. When Jamie's colleague enthusiastically recommended a miracle investment opportunity that guaranteed to double his money in just 3 months, Jamie listened politely but took the advice with a grain of salt. He'd been working in finance long enough to know that unusually high returns typically come with significant risks and that no investment is truly guaranteed. Instead of jumping in, he researched the company thoroughly, consulted with his financial advisor, and ultimately decided the investment was too risky for his portfolio. Taking information with a grain of salt doesn't mean rejecting it outright. It means applying critical thinking before acting on it. In our information-saturated world, this idiom has become increasingly relevant as we navigate news, social media, and even advice from well-meaning friends. And there you have it. We've explored 24 common English idioms, their origins, meanings, and how to use them in everyday conversation. Learning idioms takes time, so don't worry if you don't remember all of them right away. The more you hear them in context, the more natural they'll become. Try using one or two of these idioms in your conversations this week. Remember, idioms add color to your English and help you sound more like a native speaker. They're also a fascinating window into English-speaking culture and history. Thank you for joining me today at English Logic Studio. Keep practicing, and I hope to see you in our next lesson.